Hello and welcome to episode 4 on the AM Filmmaking Podcast. I'm joined once again by Will Bunce. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, Adam. I'm good. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm not losing my sanity just yet, to be fair.
Yeah, I think we're all just maintaining it just on the edge, but I think two weeks down the line, I think we're all going to be just going back to the Stone Age mentally. I think.
I thought you were going to say we're in lockdown for just 2 weeks, mate. This is the third week now we're going into. Every day feels like a weekend.
I'm totally off schedule, but with everything, yeah, going to bed late, getting up late. It's all a bit hectic, really, in terms of not a schedule, just sitting around really with nothing to do. So,
well, yeah, that's why I'm doing these podcasts. Like I said that right at the beginning, something to do instead of sitting on the lifeguard chair and just dwelling your life away.
Make podcasts. It's good. It's good. And as we saw, actually, guys, just a heads up, in the last podcast, we've had some really positive feedback from that, apparently, and he's kept me up to date with that, and consistent views all the way through. So thank you very much for that. Just a quick note, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would like to do a massive shout out to that one person in Finland and 3 people to the United States. Like, round of applause, mate. Like,
Honestly,
gone global.
We've gone global, man.
We're not an epidemic. We're now a pandemic, I think. This podcast is a disease, I think.
We're killing more people mentally than the coronavirus is.
I wouldn't say as far as that, unless we're that boring. But anyway. So yeah, despite a whole madness this week, let's get straight into it. I mean, so today we are going to be analysing one of my all-time favourite villains. I'm not sure about Will. I mean, I think he mentioned earlier that it's definitely Darth Sidious, i.e. the Emperor.
Yeah, that is. I can't lie to you guys. That is my biggest favourite. If that doesn't even make sense. We won't be cutting that out of the podcast.
Oh no, that's a staying in.
So everyone knows how crap I am with speech now. I can't talk.
Hey, don't let yourself down, man. Keep going.
But no, he's one of my favourite villains of all time, and as Adam will rightly tell you, I think to be fair, he's quite a character, and I think he's one of the greatest masterminds behind one of the biggest evil plots ever orchestrated. So there you go.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely talk more into. Well, I would love to do Darth Sidious episode. Don't know about you. Potentially. We'll see where things go. We'll see where things go.
Hey, guys, we're only going to get there if you guys actually give this podcast positive feedback. So do that, and who cares? You might see another podcast featuring Sidious.
He's trying to bribe you. He's got a lot of Easter eggs that he hasn't eaten, so he'll bribe you Easter eggs for another podcast. So then he will turn up. Anyway, let's get our heads straight. It's my favorite villain. It has to be Darth Vader. So that's who we're going to be analysing today. The Lord and Master behind the Master, probably the most famous villain of all time.
Oh yeah, he's viral everywhere for years.
I mean, as soon as you see that mask, I guarantee you about 95% or probably more would instantly say that's Darth Vader. Whatever they said, they have watched Star Wars or even not, or never ever seen it, or
must have heard of Darth Vader, no matter even seeing or not seeing Star Wars.
I think that's like one of the biggest names in the whole franchise and the whole world, I think. And it's he's even from my early childhood, when I didn't really start watching the old series until quite recently, which was back in 2015, but even then he was still a massive idol. So the way we're doing it, we're going to split it into 2, because obviously but those who don't know Star Wars, there's two stories in a way. So we're gonna ask one question, and we're gonna break it down between prequel and the the originals. So we're gonna actually analyze Anakin Skywalker. So those who don't know, Anakin was the fallen one. He was meant to be the chosen one, and by the end of episode 3, he turned to the dark side, and he got the name Lord Vader. And then obviously he got the suit, and then we go to the original trilogy. So that's how we're going to break it down. And the main question we're going to be asking is what were the main factors that caused Anakin to turn to the dark side? And then the second question is what then turned Vader back to the light? So those are the main two questions we'll be asking. So let's start with question 1, Will. So the question is, from the prequel trilogy, which factor was the biggest cause of Anakin turning to the dark side?
Well, there's 3 or 4 massive contenders for that title to win that award, of which factor was his biggest turn to the dark side. But I think, to me, it's the Jedi and Obi-Wan Kenobi in particular.
Okay.
Yourself?
In my opinion, I think it's actually Padme.
Okay.
But we'll start from the beginning. I mean, let's start right from the beginning. So, we got this young child, Anakin, Qui-Gon Jinn discovered him on Tatooine, the planet Tatooine.
Absolutely.
And he was, a slave, him and his mum Shmi, to the dealer, the metal dealer, Waldo, wasn't it? Or Watto. Watto. You know the voice where he's like, hey, come here, man. He is one of those. He had a Mexican voice. And I don't know. It's a bad CGI anyway.
Hey, the boy's good, huh?
No, I think that's Italian, mate.
It's worth it. It's worth a try anyway.
Yeah, it was.
You get to judge our impressions as well of Watto. So leave it. Comment at the end who's the best at him.
I'm not going to be the judge of that. That's for sure.
No, leave it to the audience.
I felt for Anakin. In my opinion, I really felt sorry for him during those times. Like I was just saying, he was very smart, and his childhood was very rough.
Yeah.
He was brought up, like, he didn't even have a father. He didn't know his father, and he was brought up being a slave pretty much.
I think just to build on those points, I think those points you made are excellent and very debatable there. I 100% agree that I feel sorry for him as well, and I know that obviously no child is meant to go through that, and tying to your point actually of having no father, obviously having a father is quite a crucial thing for any child to have, because it's somebody you would naturally look up to, a role model perhaps. And obviously he has his mother, and obviously she takes good care of him with what little money they have. And I think with no father figure present, that has kind of perhaps what we see later on in episode 2 resulting in the formation of quite a large impulsive ego, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors. I mean, yeah, the father, 100%. That because if you take any household, the father has that dominant figure. You get what I mean? And
I understand. 100%.
Because Anakin was only really seeing only his mother and these ruthless dealers, and these pod racers who were like scumbags, scums of the universe, pretty much. It's kind of disheartening, and that's when we see it definitely from episode 2. But I think there's another underlying issue. Like, in my opinion, like this is when, when we talk more into it, we're going to talk about his. I think he actually had a disorder, because I did a bit of research. When he did get older, and then he fell for the dark side and that. He did show these signs of being a disorder, which is, the acronym is BPD, borderline personality disorder. So I just looked it up, and it actually means it is a condition that affects how you think, how you feel, and how you interact with other people. And symptoms include like being emotionally unstable, and having upsetting thoughts and acting without thinking. Now, for me, that ticks all the boxes for Anakin Skywalker. He can be impulsive. He will have rage and management issues. And it's included in abandonment issues as an underlying factor. Would you not agree?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with what you're saying there. That disorder, what was it again?
Borderline personality disorder.
So borderline personality disorder. So for what you were talking about, I think it sounds very accurate to his personality, particularly because, as you were mentioning, he can be fueled with anger sometimes, very, very sudden at times. And other times he's a very caring person. And I think that is obviously developed from an early age. And like tying it back to our first point, the fact that there is no father, and you were saying who is like the dominant figure in the household, who obviously sets the child in good spirits with good traits, and I think that led to the seed of the disorder developing, maybe, and thus, obviously, when we see him again in episode 2, obviously it's been about 10 years. I believe it's about 10 years anyway between the first two films. Sorry, and you can clearly see how that's sprung into full bloom, if that makes sense. So it's playing quite a large role on his personality and how he acts and thinks and acts around others.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know if it was a genetic thing or it could have been an environmental factor, but I think that just like had over his whole life, like even when he went into adulthood, it definitely had a significant impact on him. And we're going to be talking about a lot of those kind of traits, being impulsive, being, having a crisis to identify himself and not being able to think properly into those decisions. I think there are, like you said, there are definitely 3 to 4 that are main causes that triggered it a bit more. So let's do it in a kind of chronological order. I think the number one, like the first thing that we see when Anakin is triggered is it has to be in episode 2 when Shmi, his mother, dies by being tortured from the Tusken Raiden. Oh, I can't
Raiders.
speak. Tusken Raiders camp. Yeah, it's a weird name. I think his anger was definitely fueled. We spent like half the movie trying to search for her, and then when we do see her, it's too late. And then all of a sudden we're feasted by this, like we said, rage and impulsive behavior. Like he just switched.
I agree 100% with that, and I think the personality disorder that obviously he was suffering from, I think that the amount of time that obviously, like you mentioned, he'd been searching for his mother half the film, to be frank, like you were saying, and I think that time played an impact on his choices as well, and that sudden rush of anger that he experiences, because he's become quite frustrated in that time because Anakin, I believe, has developed by this point, when he's still a Jedi apprentice under Obi-Wan Kenobi. I feel like he's developed a very rebellious spirit, like I feel like we're going to get onto a bit later. But also, he wants everything done immediately. He has no patience, and through not learning patience, I believe that frustration will develop, and from the frustration, he will become irritant, and then obviously thus then the anger is created as part of a chain, if you like, a chain of events, a cycle that's going on. And from the development of that, like you were mentioning, he switches to his anger very quickly all of a sudden without a build up. It's like straight away. So I think that time between when you get from the start of the movie to the halfway point where he does slaughter the Tucson Raiders, I believe that's because of an underlying cause of his anger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and as an audience member, you could feel it. Like, you could feel that kind of tension building, and then that release of anger. I mean, I'd be fuming if I travelled all that way to find that, you know. And as a Jedi, like, obviously, he wasn't meant to do that. Like, he's meant to control his feelings as much as possible, as much as it's disheartening.
Yeah, that's part of the journey of being a Jedi. You've got to master your feelings and be the master of your emotions. And obviously, Anakin at this point, he's still, like we mentioned, he's got that impulsive ego, which doesn't aid him in that. But I also think, just want to quickly add before we do move on, I think as well the attachment that he had to his mother at an early age plays quite a key point, because as we were mentioning, he didn't have a father figure to split that between. To split that attachment between the two parents, and obviously just relying solely on his mother, usually Jedi would be taken to the Jedi Temple to be trained at a very young age. Anakin's about 9 or 10 years old by this point, so most of these Jedi would have completed being a youngling and gone on to be an apprentice. So I think the attachment formed to his mother, which is obviously is not a bad thing. It's very, very good to have good attachment with your parents, and I think with that doesn't aid him when it does come to the moment of truth, when he does unfortunately see her die in his arms, which obviously is extremely sad. And I think the attachment there formed prior in episode 1, or prior to episode 1 as well, and the harsh circumstances he lived under had also played a significant contribution into that factor as well, I reckon, if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do. And you know, but I think you can't, essentially, the problem is with Anakin, there are some things that you can say, yeah, it's definitely his fault. But like, again, this is why we're saying the question, because in my opinion then, if that was the case, why did Qui-Gon Jinn decide in his instincts? I know his whatever the rating is for the
Metachlorian count.
That's it, yeah. But if he knew that he was way too old and he had this attachment to his mother, why would they even bother to accept him? Because I think that again, our second point is that the Jedi and Obi-Wan, and as well as Qui-Gon Jinn, failed him, in my opinion. That's what kind of ultimately led him to these rational decisions. You know, because if he didn't become this Jedi, he wouldn't have gone through this. No?
No, I think you're absolutely right there. And I think the decision made by Qui-Gon Jinn when he does decide to take him is it could be argued by some that it's very rash and ill thought out, but others could consider it as the point of he's being optimistic, which I can agree with. He sees beyond that, and although he does, one could argue that perhaps he does see what Anakin becomes, but looks past that and sees that he ultimately does, for a time, bring balance to the Force, obviously, until the sequel trilogy does emerge. But when he does defeat the Emperor at the end of Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, I think perhaps he does know what Anakin is, what he's going to become. Obviously, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Vader. But I think he may also look beyond that.
Yeah. But then this is my problem: is then Qui-Gon Jinn should not have gone that
Shouldn't have
far.
taken.
No, he shouldn't have taken that. It was a gamble, and the problem is because then Obi-Wan had to take his word, because obviously when he got killed by Darth Maul, it was pretty much too late by that point.
It was his death wish as well. Train the boy, he said. I think.
So in a way, like, I can't, like, in my opinion, Obi-Wan only had to do what he had to do. I thought their relationship was really tight. Like, it was almost like father and son, in my opinion. Between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Because Obi-Wan did all he can.
I like what you were saying there, like how he was between his master and apprentice relationship, and how that went beyond father and son. And I think that ties nicely into our next point. I think because, like I mentioned at the start, where I felt it was the Jedi and Obi-Wan that actually failed him, and like you were saying just then, I think that over the course of the prequel trilogy, over the 3 movies, that relationship begins to clearly deteriorate when obviously he starts to question Obi-Wan's decisions, even like in front of Padme, which you mentioning was his biggest weakness.
Yeah.
Which I think we're going to get onto later. But I think because of that, he's reckless. He's impulsive, like we were saying before. He's too hot-headed, and he's jumping to things too fast. And obviously, like, he clearly doesn't. Although he does say to Obi-Wan in episode 2, you're the closest thing I have to a father, and yet he still goes out of his way to question his decisions and not to take his word for things, which I think is a part played by that. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Yeah, I think like you said, there's a lot of factors in it, and I'm actually changing my decision. I mean, yes, Padme may have like stepped in at the wrong moment, but like the Jedi themselves, like, I think they should know in their powers. Like Yoda must have surely said, like, no, he's too reckless. We can't go on this path. But like, I think it ultimately still goes down to Qui-Gon Jinn, like his fault as such. Like, I'm not going to be funny. I'm just going to blame him, because I think it was just his gut and his risky gambleness behavior that led to all this happening. And as well as like in episode 3, when the Jedi Council refused to obviously give him the rank of master. Obviously that fuels anger towards him and more hate towards the Jedi. And as well as Mace Windu saying, going to kill Darth Sidious, obviously before Anakin pledges his allegiance to the dark side. And Mace Windu about to kill, like, it's all these things that are wrong that Anakin picked out on these little nicky pits. I don't know what to say, but like,
I see where you're coming from.
When you get irrational people who'd say, like, do you remember that one night when you did this? Now I need this for favor. It's like, what? I'm sometimes guilty of doing that, to be fair. Like, if I'm really annoyed, but like, if this is all fueled, that's what he's trying to think. He's like, this is not the Jedi way, and everything like that. So that's
absolutely.
That's what I mean.
I 100% agree. And I think just a small point to add on to that. I think, like you're mentioning Yoda as well, but I think I don't know if you mentioned him, Mace Windu. I think particularly him. I think you might have mentioned him or tied into it, but anyway, I think Windu, and like you mentioned, the Jedi Council, I think as well that they distance themselves, especially Windu, from Anakin, because obviously they clearly don't trust him. From even the start of episode 1, he's cautious around him. He's a 9-year-old boy, 10-year-old child. Mace Windu's cautious around him, which obviously is not a great start. And then obviously over the years, he still doesn't trust him, which I think that thus leads to him purposely isolating him, because although he says it's for your own good to stay out of this affair, when they do eventually go and arrest or attempt to arrest the Chancellor, who's obviously Darth Sidious, the Emperor, I believe that because of, although he's saying it, he doesn't actually mean it. He still doesn't trust him, even after he does show the ultimate loyalty to the Jedi by doing the right thing. Instead of striking Sidious down himself when he says, "Do you want to kill me?" and he says, "I certainly like to," I think he does a noble thing by turning Sidious over to the Jedi Council, and yet expecting Windu's complete compliance with him. He still doesn't give it to him, and that even that distance at that final moment when he knows, although he knows that Anakin can help him, and yet he doesn't give him the chance. So that distancing, I think that's all what opens Anakin more to the optimism that the dark side can give him what he wants.
Yeah,
and thus the Jedi failed him, like you said.
Sorry, I keep cutting in, but just
no, it's fine.
It's because like Anakin is actually doing the Jedi things, even though he is being irrational. Apart from obviously beheading Count Dooku, but like you have to blame then the Emperor's temptation. Like it didn't help with the Emperor tempting him with all this dark side magic, saving the one you loved and everything. But because he was trying to follow these Jedi ways, and then all of a sudden it's changed because they're like, oh, he's too dangerous to live. It's not that way that it should be followed.
Yeah, and I think just to a final thing to add on that. When Mace Windu, he does say, he's too dangerous to be kept alive, and he's clearly going to kill him if Anakin doesn't intervene. I think as well he's betraying the Jedi, although he is a Sith Lord, and in true fact, he is too dangerous to be kept alive. He's betraying everything the Jedi stand for, thus making him, making him what? Not a Jedi, clearly.
Well, it makes him a Sith, really.
Makes him a Sith Lord because he's just executing somebody.
Yeah.
And, and Anakin, I, like you said, he stands and does the noble thing of saying, no, he should stand trial. And he even says to Windu, that's not the Jedi way. Yeah. And obviously Windu clearly doesn't ignore, he obviously hears him and chooses purposely just to do his own thing. So I believe that it's kind of a role swap, if that makes sense, because Windu, I believe, throughout episode 1 and into 2 is kind of the traditional Jedi, what you'd like. And by the end of episode 3, when Order 66 is issued, I think that, like I said, they've swapped roles. Windu's taken on the aggressive approach, suddenly full of anger,
but
reckless, hot-headed, and Anakin's the more noble one.
That's because it's fuel, because Darth Sidious tried to electrocute him, obviously, because then he does not make a rational decision. But then I 100% agree. If he's able to withstand the Force lightning, then he should be able to stand trial. Like, a Jedi should give their life if they are obviously died, because it's better to keep the Sith like that rather than taking that gamble to say, I just want to kill him.
Yeah.
But like, I 100% agree. So then our third factor, I mean, we already mentioned her, it's got to be Padme. I think Padme definitely, I don't know what was going through her head. Like, in I can understand like Anakin and her were definitely being flirtatious, and they had a thing, a relationship. Yeah, that's it, together. And but Padme, she took too many gambles, like Qui-Gon Jinn, in my opinion. Like she followed her feelings, like, fair enough, but she didn't understand the Jedi way. I don't know, really.
I think I see where you're coming from, and I agree, and I think, I don't know if this is what you're trying to say, but in my mind, I think that she isn't respecting Anakin's virtues, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's I don't know if you're trying to get from that, but essentially, obviously, he's a Jedi. He's not allowed to love. Well, he is allowed, but obviously he has to control his emotions back to that point. And I think she doesn't respect those boundaries, because although he is stepping over the mark with his ego, going back to that point, and his impulsive nature as developed from early age, I think she, although clearly rejects it at first, she should be holding that barrier up and not lowering it, you could say.
Yes, yeah, actually, that's what I'm trying to say. Cheers, Will.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, she should be stronger, in my opinion. As in, like she should have just. Oh, sorry, I just burped mid into mic. But like, I mean, I had a nice chili con carne today.
You should wash your hands, you dirty pig.
What?
You not seen that?
No, not really.
Oh,
Anyway, but like, yeah, like, it's that. I think she might have had a disorder herself, because she was very impulsive to like to then like get married in secret and then keep this all to one side. Like, she should have been stronger to say, no, this is not right. I'm just gonna keep my distance and everything like that. But then at times, to be fair, Padme did show a force for good towards Anakin. I think she was kind of sometimes that stepping stone to say, hey, are you okay? Just checking everything's good. But clearly it didn't work, because Anakin was definitely getting too much pressure from the Jedi. But she should have like understood the consequences when confessing her love to him.
I know. I think I do agree with that, and I think as well, she isn't, obviously, like we've just discussed, like he isn't being aided by her. I think she should be encouraging him, like you were saying, to follow the Jedi law and not to rebel, thus obviously defeating or crushing that rebellious nature within him. And obviously they wouldn't have got married in the end, and he wouldn't have obviously undergone the life he did. And I feel like his trail to become a Sith Lord could ultimately have been avoided, if you agree with that.
Yeah. But like I'd like, if I was to summarize this question, I actually would have changed my view. Like, overall, I was thinking, oh yeah, Padme definitely, she was definitely the one. But actually, after discussing all that, like, I think it's the Jedi all the way from the start. Like, and I'm gonna keep mentioning his goddamn name, Qui-Gon Jinn. Like, I would, if I had to solely blame it on one person, I'll blame it on him. I don't really care, just because of his recklessness to choose him
and take him away.
And then apart from all that, the Jedi not really supporting him, or like like you said, keeping a distance. It's like, say you invited to a friends group, and the friends kind of just don't talk to you. It's like, what's the point then, being my friend? And
what's
then
the point inviting you over in the first place?
Exactly. Like inviting to a house party. That's another better example. It's just, what's the point? And obviously it was fueled by the Emperor then tempting him and all that. But like, I think overall, yeah, the Jedi 100% to blame for Anakin's turn to ultimately the dark side. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, no, I think slightly. I do agree with what you're saying. Obviously, with Qui-Gon Jinn being a big factor, obviously choosing to actually take him from his mother on Tatooine, when clearly that bond between the two would have impacted his later life, which of course it did. I do, however, though, I think if, even though he was taken, I think if Windu and the other Jedi on the Council would have shown more open arms with Anakin and given a more steady approach instead of a rejective one.
Yeah.
And instead of just having Obi-Wan as a father figure, again, I think that bond was, although the bond went from his mother, because he obviously wasn't seeing her for 10 odd years, I think that bond came in the form of Obi-Wan, which again, it wasn't defeating that bond, which ultimately built in him this rebellious and hot-headed nature, impulsiveness. And I think if there'd been more of a collective upbringing experience for Anakin as such, between Windu, and he wouldn't have had one central father figure. He could have had, multiple. And I think that collective nature of all the Jedi playing their part would have extinguished that rebellious fire within him, and thus he would become a noble, wiser person who takes a more relaxed, more well thought out, logical approach to these things. And he would, as a result of probably become a prosperous Jedi Knight, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. 100%. There's lots of other factors as well, not forgetting. We're just touching upon the three big factors, and I think we could both agree that the Jedi were ultimately the ones throughout who caused Anakin's downfall, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We've just done the prequel, and that now Darth Vader's obviously Anakin's turned to the dark side, and then we get the infamous, famous Darth Vader. And can I just say before getting into the second question, which is about the original, I must say, Darth Vader in Rogue One is probably the perfect summary of of himself being the ultimate bad guy. Like I just love Rogue One and I think Darth Vader in that was just my favorite character in that, in my opinion. I'd just like to say that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I think just the way he mercilessly just hacks down the rebel soldiers. I think that's an ideal example of what we've just discussed, and I think that turned him into the killing machine that the Emperor wanted him to be.
Yeah, and as well, I recently watched, I know I'm going a little bit off topic, but I recently watched a fan-made film. It was called Vader, Shards of the Past. It's an amazing fan-made film. It's 15 minutes long. It's made by the Star Wars Theory. Big shout out to them. Honestly, that's another great summary. It's just like you said, that scene in Rogue One where he hacks him down, absolutely, like that is my favorite all-time Star Wars moment. Absolutely. When I saw that in the cinema, I saw it in the cinema twice, and it just got better every time you see it. But like,
I think that's an ideal model of what Disney did with Star Wars once they bought it.
What, hacking down George
Lucas? No.
And hacking down the story from the new trilogy and all that.
Possibly, yes. Well,
what happened? Whatever happened? Anyway, right. So we obviously had Rogue One, and then I'd say as well Episode 4, where like Vader was still at his full potential. He's strangling people. He was taking shit from no one, literally. Even his own troops. Like he nearly killed one of his own troops, using the Force choke and all that.
When he cuts up, he Force chokes his own officers when they give him shit. So he basically he fucks them up for the last time.
Yeah, I mean he's nowhere near as reckless as bloody Kylo Ren.
No. Getting his lightsaber and cutting up a computer.
Yeah. Anyway, so that brings us. Yeah, that's. But going back on task, we'll get on to question 2. So this mainly affects episode 5 and episode 6, and it's which factor had the largest effect on triggering Darth Vader's transformation back to the light. Again, there's quite a lot of factors, but we're going to try and summarize into 3. Now, the first one we're going to start. Well, actually, I forgot to mention it's not just the film ones we're going to talk about, but in the recent Clone Wars series in Rebels, I think we should start with that. Do you not agree?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's an ideal starting point. Really,
that was before obviously episode 5 and episode 6, before the Battle of Yedin or Yenin. That's it.
Yavin.
Yavin. See, I'm useless at Star Wars names. This is why I've got you.
That's why I'm here, guys.
Yep, that's all he's here for, just for Star Wars names.
Just for the names.
But yeah, so going into Star Wars Clone Wars, in Rebels actually, that last, I think it is the last episode, when we see Ahsoka. So Ahsoka, if again those who don't know Star Wars very well or haven't seen the Clone Wars, she was Anakin's old apprentice. And in this last scene, Vader's about to kill these rebel people. I don't know what they stole. Could you remind me again?
Sorry?
Did they steal anything from Darth Vader?
No. Essentially, what was happening was they were all in a Sith temple. They want the two Jedi stole a Sith holocron that Darth Vader was after, so thus he goes there to confront them and take the holocron.
Ah, okay, that makes sense then. That makes sense. So Ahsoka obviously confronts him. So I think it was a very quick scene. It was about 5 minutes long. This whole fight scene, but I think we both agreed that the main trigger point was when she slashed the helmet. And for a weird moment, you obviously you see his eyes, and there was a bit of pain. It's a bit weird because he said his name, like he said her name, Ahsoka.
So, yeah.
And I think this is the beginning of Vader's realization of what he's become,
what he's done as well.
He's go on, mate.
Oh, cheers. I think I like what you're saying there. It's a great pushing to the point, because once the slash has taken place, there's a lot of pain in his eyes, you can see, and he doesn't go immediately to attack her. He's there. He's looking at the ground, and he's just breathing, and you can see that he is literally, like you're saying, he was thinking about what he's done, the life that he has created for himself, and the pain he's caused others, and the realization of what he has become, like a monster.
Yeah.
I don't know what are your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that it was only a brief moment, like we said, it was that brief moment where he's realized, he it's just so brief, where you think, yeah, this is the start of when Vader was truly turning back. However, there is a twist to this, because obviously at the end, when Ahsoka says, I don't want to fight him, and then there's that famous bit, like that this is my favorite bit, it's like, then you will die, and then he ignites his lightsaber, like that was sick. See, again, apart from that moment, that may be a manipulation element, which, if we're going back to his borderline personality disorder, it's that kind of finding his identity that he might have struggled with. It's similar to, have you seen the film Split?
No, I haven't. No.
Anyone who's seen the film Split, I think Darth Vader is a very more less kind of, it's, I can't remember his name, but like, it's less obviously conflicted than that. But I think there was a manipulation element in terms of to get Ahsoka emotionally attached, which may make her weaker. So, but I think we just had to mention that, because otherwise there's only really two main factors that caused Vader to switch back. But I think Ahsoka was the beginning of that, in my opinion, and in yours, obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So the first fact, the main factor is, obviously, it's got to be Luke Skywalker. I mean, he is the son to it's Anakin's son, or Vader's son, and I think Skywalker has a massive impact. Skywalker, what I liked about Luke, he had a massive impact in kind of manipulating his own father, especially in episode 6. Like, that was very predominant.
I do agree. I think his manipulation, specifically on Vader, who's obviously undergone years of mental transformation from the Emperor, and I think the fact, like Luke, he obviously very cleverly does it, but he forces Vader, in a sense, to search his true feelings. I don't know if you agree with that. And
Yeah. Yeah, and
once
go on.
he gives cheers, and once he gives himself up on Endor, and he purposely um, gives himself up to Darth Vader, I think that forced him, as a result, to think on his thoughts, because he probably thought, well, why has he given himself up so willingly, if that makes
Mm.
sense? It wasn't like he was pressured to somewhat, but I think just that element had a kind of questioning nature to Vader. I don't know if you
Mm.
agree with that.
Yeah, and I think even then when Vader was fighting him, especially in episode 5, I wouldn't think of Vader trying to kill Luke. I think there was that, again, there's that manipulation, but
Mm.
I wouldn't think, even if Vader was strong enough to kill him, I don't think he would. Because again, it's
He's
all
his
that,
son as
exactly,
well.
as well as like he still had that emotional attachment. you know
Even if he is still a Dark Lord of the Sith and he's never
yeah.
met his son before,
Mm.
there you go.
But I think overall, like, Luke was a true reflection to Vader and in Anakin's past. It's the life that he never, or he may have had, but it's a life he never had, really, realistically,
Mm.
because he fell to the dark side, and there's a sense of jealousy. But then again, it's kind of like, why would he want to take away that moment for him? I think another key element as well is, Vader, or Luke having the courage to let Vader analyze his own lightsaber.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree, and I think that as well. The fact, like when he does surrender it to Darth Vader, his father, like you're mentioning, he analyzes it, and I think that massively ties into how he understands and he remembers his past of how
mm,
he used to be a Jedi. And although they were in the midst of fighting a war against obviously Count Dooku and the Separatists, I think that he wielded it with like he wielded it for a noble cause, if you like, to bring
yeah,
peace to the galaxy. And yet that same hand, well, obviously not saying that because he's obviously a machine now, but you know what I mean. Like he, in those
mm,
same hands, he's now using a similar weapon to basically spread hatred, fear, evil, and destruction, kind of essentially undoing all the good that he once did, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, that does make sense. And
Um,
I think as well, if we're still on Luke, it's, he even had the balls in episode 6 to judge Vader on how he was fighting in that final battle scene, for the
hmm,
Emperor. Telling Vader to kind of search for his true feelings, and then Luke was able to see that, uncovering what the Emperor was like. No, I could only see dark thoughts. But
hmm.
like, it was very much
And
unraveling
how the
him.
Emperor clouded Vader's mind from his true self with these, like you're
Mm,
saying, dark thoughts and like hatred and evil and just wanting more and more and revenge, that kind of thing.
yeah, it's that build up again. It's similar to the build up where with Anakin with the Jedi. I think it's Vader building up to then having that hatred towards the Emperor and the Empire and everything like that.
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know. And speaking of the Emperor, I mean, 100%, the Emperor's actions were truly out of order. Like, he's obviously your favorite bad guy, and I love the Emperor as well. But going all the way to, in front of Darth Vader to electrocute him and to try and kill him,
Yeah.
that was a key point for Darth Vader to reflect on and
Yeah. And
making a
that
big
was,
decision.
yeah, I think that as well, like, it's kind of, it's so, I think what also prompted him was because all those years of, if you like, service that he had done for the Emperor, and how is he repaid for that? He's electrocuted. And
Yeah,
that kind of that can kind of make Vader think, well, I've spent what 19, 20, 24, 23 years, literally serving this one guy, this old man, And how does he repay me? He tortures me, you know?
Yeah, he does. He does. But then again, the relationship was a weird one between, like, I think the Emperor is just full of false promises. You know, like,
Yeah.
he would say, "Oh yeah, I could promise you to save this person and that," and then when he becomes the man in metal, where he's weaker, the Emperor thinks, "Oh, now I can actually overpower him." I said, "No, you actually killed your wife, and now I'm going to kill your son." You know, and in a way, like Vader, though, he had this plan since Episode 5 because he didn't want to kill Luke. He said Vader wanted him and Luke to rule the galaxy as father and son, which is implying Vader's already had enough of the Emperor by this point. You know, he's had enough of this service of what the Emperor wants to do and everything like that.
Well, it's the traditional rule of the Sith. Like, once the apprentices had enough, like he clearly has, he overthrows the master and takes that position of authority.
Yeah, and that's why there's only two. Can never be three.
Yeah.
And you know, and I just like to compare, especially that last fight was very similar to almost like a Roman gladiator duel.
Yeah.
So I imagine, like, you know, the Emperor is obviously, well, the Emperor of Roman times.
Yeah.
He puts his thumb up or thumb down to decide who dies and who doesn't. And then Darth Vader felt like he was almost like Russell Crowe from the actual Gladiator movie, you know, saying, "Are you not entertained? I've done 20 so years of service to you, and now you're going to kill my son." You know, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you got anything else to add on that.
Not really, to be fair, but I think I agree 100%, and I think as well, just going back to that original point of the pain the Emperor is inflicting on Luke, it acts as a push on Vader's decision. I think that's very key. But I 100% think that when Luke is forced to confront the Emperor, it is compared to a duel like over who will succeed the throne of an empire, like you were saying, and I do think that it's a very strong comparison that you've made there, and I 100% agree. And I think it's very relatable to the Darth Vader and Luke kind of struggle, if you like, over you know, that Emperor. The Emperor's obviously, he's playing it. He thinks he's playing it like a game for entertainment, if like for his own entertainment, which he clearly is. And
Yeah.
like you were saying, in like a traditional gladiator duel, it's for his own amusement. And obviously, at the end of it, he does lose his life at the end of it, as does Vader. But it's just that fact of even overcoming all that. And I think, you know, I don't really know what to add on to that, but if you see where I'm coming from, there.
Yeah, I mean, with this thing, it's really only these two factors overall. I mean, Ahsoka had a beginning realization, but that
It
could
didn't
have
have
been
a lasting effect, did it?
no, like Luke Skywalker and the Emperor has lasting effects. It takes over time for all this to build up, you know.
Yeah.
So this was more of an easier question, but like question 1 was definitely harder because there was lots more choices. But I think question 2 was definitely more of a easier one in a weird way, in my opinion. So, so if overall, if we look at throughout Anakin and Vader's life, like overall, like, do we think it's his tough childhood that had the most significant impact? You know, if we're going back to his possible disorder of BPD, you know, or do we think it's like the environmental issues, you know, like no father, no Jedi, the Jedi pressuring him, and the Emperor being an asshole, you know?
I think it's mainly just the environmental factors, perhaps, that in my mind have the largest effect on him. I believe that it's the Jedi that are, as a result, impacting his decisions. But going back to the disorder point, I agree. I feel that because he's got that, I feel like the Jedi are fueling it more. If that makes sense, because he's got that initial difficulty with associating with people, whatever it was, and I think the Jedi, although they're distancing themselves from him, I think that has aided in that becoming a like an impulsive nature, if you like, and that as a result obviously springs into sudden bursts of anger, hatred, etc. And that obviously leads to his creation as Darth Vader at the end of it, and the amount of people he slaughters over the course of so many years between the films.
But
really.
don't forget, even into his Vader periods when he was his Master Dark Lord, he still had this impulsive behaviour. You know, like a good example is, you know, when they're chasing Han Solo and Leia,
Yeah,
is sending the ships through the asteroid field. It's impulsiveness to that's not a word, but impulsiveness. That's it.
Yeah.
To keep saying no, shoot those asteroids. We're gonna go and get them.
Yeah.
You know,
he's very head on. He's still very head on, like
yeah,
he used to be.
yeah. And
even in a machine, like he still has it.
You know, and overall, like, you know, and it still shows like he still didn't find his identity truly. You know, like one of the symptoms is finding his identity. He didn't find it when he was Anakin, and even when he was Vader, he still didn't find it because he was under the shadow of the Emperor. You know, he always wanted to be this master, but he never became this master.
Yeah.
He was always an apprentice, never a trainer, never ever a trainer.
Exactly.
You know, so, but like, I think it's a mix of both. You know, I 100% agree that the environmental factors fueled into these kind of like environmental
factors.
Yeah, environment factors help to fuel it as such. But you start when you were born, and then obviously it then grows older.
Yeah.
But I think we've really, like, I mean, we've been talking for like an hour now. You know, like, this is quite a long podcast, but like, I think we've really gone into detail about it, especially about Anakin.
Yeah, we've really broken it down and got down to the right depths of that, definitely.
You know, I really enjoyed it. It was quite enjoyable. I mean, I should really call it about Anakin's life rather than Darth Vader, but, you know, what can you do?
Exactly.
But I think that's going to conclude us for today. Thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you, guys.
Obviously,
enjoyed it.
Thank you very much to Will.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's
joining in again. We'll decide next week what kind of character we want to do next. If you've got any ideas, like, leave them into the comments or give me a text or even an email.
I mean, I'm thinking of Han Solo at the moment. Maybe that could be a
good shout.
Certain one, but you never know. We want to see your guys' ideas as well. It's it's good for you guys to engage with us as well, especially with Adam, because obviously, you know, being the great person he is, you know, he'll get back to you guys, and he'll definitely consider your thoughts in that. So it's worth hooking him up if you've got any ideas.
Oh, thank you.
So it's all good. It's all good, man.
So cute. Anyway, but yeah, you can listen to our podcast all on Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud, and as well as on YouTube. So just check out my channel and check out Will's channel; they'll all be on there. Obviously, yeah, as well, follow Will's channel as well, which is Humanities Reimagined. It's got a new logo to it. It's really cool, and it does GCSE and A-level pages. So give that a like, give that a subscription. Sure, that'd be really cool to do. All right.
We're doing sorry, just a quick side note, we're just uploading daily at the moment. So we're doing, at the moment, I'm covering over the history and A-level geography syllabuses as well, if you guys are interested in that, or just any general hunger for geography or history, I suppose. We're covering the Tudors at the moment, and we are doing earthquakes at the moment as well. So if you're interested, head on over there.
I love earthquakes. And the song. Good song. Anyway, that's it. That's it for us, guys. Tune in next week, Monday, which will be analysing the third comedy film, which is going to be one of my classics. It's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So if you do like witty banter and really funny content, please tune in on next week, Monday. Stay safe, guys. Stay indoors, and see you all next week.